My granddaughter, Evie, loves strawberries. And when Cindy goes to whatever that farm is called where people line up for hours to buy strawberries, and she buys some, Evie's fired up. Since Evie loves strawberries so much, this spring we decided to plant a couple strawberry bushes. Evie was so excited she couldn't wait for her first strawberries. One night when I got home, Evie was waiting for me. She knew the first strawberry was on the bush, and she wanted to go outside, pick it, and eat it. We went out, and sure enough, there was a big, beautiful red strawberry ready to be eaten. Then I turned it around, and it was still green on the backside. And I said, Evie, I'm sorry, it's not ready yet. We're going to have to wait. She sat down on the ground and said, okay, you sit there, I'll sit here. Evie assumed if we waited 5 minutes, the strawberry would be ripe and ready. But it doesn't exactly work that way. It took that strawberry 2 more days before it was ready to eat. A lifetime for Evie. We laugh because it's cute when a 3-year-old's impatient and doesn't understand the concept of waiting. But how often are you like Evie? God has a plan for your life. You're not an accident. You have a God-designed purpose. Regardless of how many times you've messed up, how bad a life you've led, how many mistakes you've made, or people you've hurt, God still has a plan for you. God has a general plan for everyone, for you to be saved, transformed by his love and grace, spend eternity with him in heaven. That's a good plan. God also has a specific plan for you. And when you begin to get a sense of that plan, you're filled with questions. What should I do? How do I prepare? What do I need to know? What comes next? When can I start? I want to start right now. I'll sit here for a few minutes and wait on God's plan to be ready, but it better not take longer than that. Once you know what you're supposed to do, what God's called you to do, you want to do it right now. One of my least favorite sayings is, good things come to those who wait. I like good things. I don't like to wait. Yesterday, we went to a restaurant for lunch. There were 3 people in front of us in line. I was like, let's go somewhere else. I just don't want to wait this long. 3 people. I don't like waiting. Years ago, Cindy and I, it was a cool opportunity. We got to visit the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. We walked around and we watched athletes preparing, and we stood at a window and we watched some gymnasts training. We weren't allowed in, but then one of the coaches saw us and invited us in, said, you sit here as long as you'll stay quiet. We sat and watched for about half an hour as one of the gymnasts practiced the position of her toes, the point of her toes on landing in a tumbling run, over and over and over. It was mind-numbing. We walked out of the Olympic Training Center, and there's a big digital sign in front of the building, and it said 1,008 days till the next Olympics. She had a purpose and a goal to win a medal, but it was more than 2.5 years away. We watched her 2.5 years later win an Olympic medal. But in the meantime, she was in a season of waiting and training. No one likes reading books about preparation. They don't show gymnasts practicing on TV. No one wants to watch their team practice for the big game. You want to see the game. No one wants to watch rehearsal. You want to watch the show. Maybe you know what God's calling you to do. You understand your assignment. You know your purpose, but it hasn't happened yet. Everything points to that moment when the purpose is fulfilled. But right now, you're in a season of waiting and preparation, and no one likes that. But if you skip God's preparation process, you fail. Because you don't develop the character, the skills, the knowledge, or the trust to accomplish the assignment. You can't hurry God. Over the next few weeks, we're going to learn from one of the great leaders in the Bible, Joshua. We'll look at some iconic stories about his leadership, some of the remarkable battles. But I want to start with a story you probably haven't heard. This is the backstory to Joshua's leadership, and it's his preparation. This is a story that if you've read through the whole Bible, you might have kind of missed. But I was reading through the life of Moses in Exodus, and this little 5-verse passage jumped out at me. It's a story about a guy who couldn't get enough of God's presence. When everyone else was tired and went home, he stayed. The story is found in Exodus chapter 33, starting with verse 7. Now Moses used to take a tent, pitch it outside the camp some distance away, calling it the tent of meeting. Anyone inquiring of the Lord would go to the tent of meeting outside the camp. It was a place to pray. Whenever Moses went out to the tent, all the people rose and stood at the entrances to their tent, watching Moses until he entered the tent. The picture is Moses was going to church, or he was going to prayer meeting. Everyone else stood outside their tent and watched as Moses went to spend time in the presence of God. As Moses went into the tent, the pillar of cloud would come down and stay at the entrance while the Lord spoke with Moses. That's pretty spectacular. A cloud came to the entrance of the tent. There was no doubt that God was visiting Moses in that tent. Can you imagine if every Sunday when you came to church, a cloud came down and covered the front doors? People would line up down the street to see the cloud. If a cloud hovered over our church, you expect people would come in to meet the God of the cloud. There's no way I would stay outside. I'd get here early to make sure I could spend a few moments just looking at the cloud, God's glory. I mean, if you could see God's glory, would you ever miss a service? Whenever the people saw the pillar of cloud standing at the entrance to the tent, they all stood and worshiped, each at the entrance to his tent. For whatever reason, the people didn't join Moses in the tent. We don't know. Maybe they weren't allowed. Maybe they were intimidated. Regardless, they stood at their tents and worshiped, recognizing that God was with Moses in the tent. And they knew that because they saw the cloud of God's glory. Then the Lord would speak to Moses face to face as a man speaks with his friend. You know, as you read the story of the Israelites trapped in the wilderness, they grumble and complain against Moses over and over. How could they do that when they knew God was meeting with them? A cloud of God's presence covered the tent, and Moses talked to God. Now here's the just little one verse that I want to show you in this story that jumped out at me. This is the thing you probably skipped over. Then Moses would return to the camp, but his young aide Joshua, son of Nun, did not leave the tent. That's the first moment or mention that Moses wasn't alone in the tent. His young assistant Joshua went with him. And when Moses was done talking to God, Joshua stayed in the tent. He waited in the presence of God. I've got a lot of memories of growing up in small churches. We went to church every time the doors were open. When the doors weren't open, we opened the doors. For many years, my dad was the song leader. He was a good one. We didn't have worship pastors back then. We had song leaders. We were always there. We didn't miss church for any reason. In my 29 years here, I've never missed a Saturday night or Sunday morning because I was sick. Not one time. It's just the way I was taught. Now, could it happen? Yeah, it could happen. When it does, you better pray because I'm really sick. I'm not faking it. Now, let me pause and tell you, I won't come if my being here presents a threat to others. Twice during 2020, I had to miss weekend services because I'd been exposed to COVID. I was quarantined. Well, one time I missed. I'll confess to you now because it's long enough ago that you can't get mad. Well, you could. Won't do you any good. The second time, I just couldn't take it. I couldn't bear the thought of another weekend at home. I love watching online, but for me, it's not enough. I want to be here. And so on Saturday, we closed the balcony and turned out all the lights up there so it was dark. And I came to the sanctuary before anyone else was here for church. And I came and I sat in the top row of the balcony. We put up the signs, balcony closed, so nobody be around me. And I just enjoyed the whole service there. And then when service was over, I waited till everyone else was gone, and then I came down. So no one was within 50, 60 feet of me. That was my modified quarantine. I just wanted to be in church. Because I'm just not sure I'm spiritually strong enough to live for Jesus without regular times of worship and learning and fellowship. I don't just love church. I need church. I need to be here, and I needed it that day. Now, if you're quarantined because of COVID, don't try what I did. You don't have people to close the balcony and turn out the lights and not let anyone up there. I do. As a kid, not only did we go to church every time the doors were open, we stayed until everyone was gone and the lights were turned off. In those days, some of you would remember, church lasted a long time. I remember many Sunday nights praying at the altar with my mom until 9:30 or 10 o'clock. If church happened to get done early, say before 9 o'clock, and if we were good, we got to go to Dairy Queen for ice cream. Church didn't get over early very often. Dairy Queen was rare for our family. Well, our services last an hour and 10 minutes, and so you've got time for Dairy Queen after church today. So I have a gift card for somebody who wants to take their family for ice cream after church today. This is a $25 gift card. You want to do it, Polly? Here you go. Enjoy Dairy Queen. Rose is excited. Spend it on your kids. Enjoy that. My dad was old school. If we got to church 15 minutes early, that was late. If we left early, lightning might strike. In all my years going to church with my family, I never remember leaving early, not one time. In fact, we didn't leave until the last person was done praying at the altar. Dad believed leaving early sent a message to God that something else mattered more than him. That's why it drives me nuts when people walk out when I start praying. Now, I'm sure you're not trying to send a message, you're responding to an emergency, but I was raised to think that way. We were normal kids. I remember begging my mom, please, Mom, can't we just go get pizza? Everyone's leaving. Look around. There's just 10 people here. She didn't even answer. One look, I knew the response. I wasn't brave enough to ask my dad. I was raised to believe that if we laughed, we might miss the moment that God has designed for us. And I can't tell you how many times my parents said, never forget, good things come to those who wait. Times have changed, haven't they? Last year, Americans' membership in churches dropped below 50% for the first time in history. 2020, 47% said they belonged to a church, synagogue, or mosque. That's down from 50% in 2018. That's down from 70% in 1999. 20 years, we dropped that far. As a result of the pandemic, about 1 in 3 practicing Christians stopped attending church altogether, in person or online. The church dropped by 1/3 in America in 1 year. Nearly 1/3 of both millennials and Gen Z have no religious affiliation. 2,045% of people sampled in a survey were considered practicing Christians. 2020, that number had dropped to 25% of people. Out of the people who fell away, half became non-practicing Christians and half became non-Christians. Pretty sobering, isn't it? It's a choice. It's a priority decision. Something mattered and matters more. So what should we do? Should I get mad and make you feel guilty? Is it your fault? Is it my fault? Should we somehow make church more amazing so you'll be here? Is it God's fault? Do we need a cloud of glory? Do people need to see his presence, not just sense his presence? We work really hard to make every minute count. We pray, we plan, we pray, plan some more. We want to honor your time, not waste it. In the time we set aside for God, we want to be spiritually, mentally, physically prepared. It wasn't always that way in church. Some of you remember the days when the music was picked right before service, or sometimes it was picked during service. Remember that? Song leaders say, what do you want to sing? Somebody call out 47, and we do it. Our last hymn sing years ago, the guy leading it called out, and one of our smart aleck students, I know which one it was, I won't call his name, called out the number, and when the guy turned to it, it was "Oh Canada." That's why we don't do hymn sings anymore, in case you wonder. Although "Oh Canada" is a wonderful song, that's just not a song we're going to sing in church. Some of you remember the Y'all Come Choir. Anybody remember Y'all Come Choir? Only a few of you. That's when you didn't have an actual choir. You'd say, anybody want to sing in the choir? They'd raise their hands and say, y'all come. You clap, but it was horrible. I mean, it was, wow. We have come a long way. But sometimes I wonder if in our desire to maximize our time, do we miss special moments with God? In our rush to live our busy lives, do we crowd God right out of our schedule? Should we be alarmed at the trends? Or was my family out of control and our church behind the times? When it comes to church, how long is too long? How much is too much? We don't know how long Joshua stayed in the tent. We just know he stayed longer than Moses. When Moses left the place of God's presence, Joshua stayed. He couldn't get enough of God. He must have believed that good things come to those who wait. After the deepening this year, I posted some of my observations about the students on Facebook. Here's one of the things I posted. Twice services lasted more than 2 hours. They stayed focused. They didn't have to leave for bathroom, drink, etc. There was so much less movement and distraction than in our typical weekend services, in spite of the length. And then one of the students, Andrew Dipple, commented this on the post. He said, I didn't even realize service lasted 2.5 hours until I read that. The Lord was so present, everything else kind of faded away. I wasn't worried about the time or what was happening after service. For once, it felt like I was completely 100% submerged in his presence. It was a remarkable feeling. Years ago, I had a 10 o'clock in the morning interview with someone who wanted to be our worship pastor. And at 9 o'clock, I came to the sanctuary for my time with God. I worshiped and prayed. At that time, we had a grand piano here in the sanctuary. I sat at the piano and played and worshiped. You've never heard that, and you wouldn't want to, but God loves it. And that day, the presence of God was so holy and special that I lost track of time. And I was 35 minutes late for the appointment. And the person who wanted to lead you in worship got mad at me for spending too much time in God's presence. See, I wonder if we've just lost our sense of awe at God's presence. Is it possible that we're in too big a hurry? Joshua stayed, maybe because there weren't restaurants to go to, football games to watch, or lakes to visit. Remember when you were dating your spouse, or some of you are still dating, you were never in a hurry to leave. It didn't matter where you had to be or what else is going on. You lingered at the restaurant or you stayed at the front door, soaking in every last moment you could possibly get. And then as soon as you got home, you called her on the phone and spent another hour talking. I used to talk to Cindy on the phone. I hate talking on the phone, but I love Cindy. When's the last time you just stayed like that in God's presence? What's become a bigger priority in your life than the presence of God? What could possibly matter more? And as I look back, maybe my parents weren't too extreme. I don't want to ever lose the excitement of realizing that the creator of the universe spends time with me. That's what we're going to do tonight at 6 o'clock. We're just spend time in worship and enjoying the presence of God. There's nothing like his presence. At the earliest stages of Joshua's leadership development, he didn't leave the tent. He wanted to be in the presence of God, and he wanted to stay in the presence of God. And as you'll learn in a couple weeks, when Moses died, Joshua became the leader and led the Israelites where Moses never could. Now, all of that is introduction. And it just leads to this question. Did Joshua stay in the tent because he knew he was going to be the leader? Or did Joshua become the leader because he stayed in the tent? I don't know. The Bible doesn't tell us. But in that tent, God was teaching Joshua leadership. Joshua is learning faith, trust, courage, and confidence in the presence of God. As he stayed in that tent, Joshua became familiar with God's presence, a presence that would sustain him through grief when he lost his mentor, Moses. Joshua was being prepared to deal with criticism from the whining, complaining Israelites. You know, I've really learned it in the last year. The more time I spend in God's presence, the less whining and complaining bother me. Joshua needed that. I've needed that. As Joshua spent time with the source of wisdom and strength, he's being prepared to win historic battles and lead the Israelites to the promised land. God's presence wasn't just so Joshua could feel good. It's not about chasing a feeling. There was a purpose for the presence. This principle is so important. If you want God to use you tomorrow, you have to spend time with him today. I talk to a lot of young leaders who are intent on acquiring knowledge and skills, but they neglect this part of preparation, spending time in God's presence. I'm for leadership skills and team building and learning. I love knowledge. That's why I'm still in school. We need to know all we can, but you can't rely on knowledge alone. There is no substitute for the presence of God. You devalue your mission when you neglect the one who called you. See, your talent is not what qualifies you for leadership. Your knowledge is not the key. Instead, if you want to lead, you must first demonstrate a love for God's presence, a passionate dependence on him. Good things really do come to those who wait. Now, does that mean you have to be in church every time the doors are open? I don't know. I don't. I do know this. Those Sunday nights at the altar until 10 o'clock, God was preparing me to lead. All those times we went to church when we could have been doing something else, God was forming in me the value and character and passion and persistence that I would need to one day lead. Thank God my mom and dad didn't leave, because I needed the time in God's presence. When Tyler was just a baby, I worked at a church that ended every Sunday night the same way. People would kneel around the altars and just sit in their seats for prayer. And every Sunday night I would go and I would get Tyler out of the nursery, and I like to walk and pray. And I would carry Tyler in my arms around that sanctuary as I walked and prayed. Even as an infant, I wanted him to sense the presence of God and the peace that comes in that presence. From the earliest age, God was preparing Tyler. I'll never forget a Sunday night service. Parker was about 7 years old, more than 20 years ago. At the end of the service, we were spending extended time in prayer. And after about 15 minutes, prayer time was winding down. We were singing a final song of worship. People were getting ready to leave. But in that moment, Parker suddenly sensed the Spirit of God in a strong way at 7 years old. I can take you to the exact place he was sitting, because you're sitting in it right now. Exactly that spot. Parker stood up with his hands raised. Tears were pouring down his face. He was worshiping and praying. It was so powerful. But you know what I remember most? No one left. No one. Service kept going because one 7-year-old was having his most powerful God moment. And rather than leave, everyone stayed and prayed for my son as he lingered in the presence of God. I remember exactly where he was. I can see that moment in my mind. I remember where some of you were at that moment. I remember where Paul and Becky Roden were sitting as they were praying for my son who was praying. Parker waited on God, and the rest of us waited on Parker. Because God was preparing Parker for his future assignment. See, you can't skip the step. Spiritual leadership comes from the presence of God. If you want to be a leader, if you want to be a difference maker, if you want to impact your world, it's not about how many followers you have on social media. It's you got to spend time in the tent. Amen. Jesus said it this way: I'm the vine, you're the branches. If a man remains in me and I in him, he will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. How passionate are you about the presence of God? Is it truly first in your life? Are you willing to stay in the tent like Joshua? Are you willing to wait on the Lord? Have we become so Americanized that even when the hour and 10-minute service gets to an hour and 4 minutes, we have to hurry and leave? You say, Rod, what do you want us to do? I don't know. I really don't. No, I have an agenda. I guess I want you to just consider that question and make whatever adjustments you need to make. You get to decide. For some of you, it might mean being more faithful to church. It might mean that you've developed some bad habits, putting other things first. The last 18 months, a lot of people have reprioritized and moved church down the ladder. I showed you the stats. A third of people in America, in the midst of the worst time that in our lifetime that we've experienced, a third of the people decide, I'm going to try this without God. That's weird. So it's time to change. Some of you are modeling misplaced priorities for your kids. And later, when your kids don't want to attend church, don't you blame the youth pastors, because it's harvest from the seeds you've sown. Don't blame us. We're still here. I mean, tonight's a good night to start, to prioritize the presence of God, whether you do that here, whether you do that in the living room. For some of you, it's not about church attendance. It's just getting back to time with God, your own time with God, time in His presence. Others of you, you're like Evie with the strawberry, and you're wondering why it's not happening for you right now. You miss this component, the presence of God. And so you're going to have to make some adjustments. Good things really do come to those who wait. I hate waiting. You hate waiting. God doesn't. If you can trust His plan for your life, then you can trust His timing for your life. If you can trust God with the what, then I challenge you to trust God with the when. In His presence, you find peace and security and confidence. In His presence, He prepares you to make a difference. He prepares you to lead. If you want to lead, if you want to be a world changer, if you want to make an eternal difference, if you want to accomplish His plan and His purpose, you can't skip the preparation. You will never accomplish God's plan without first spending time in His presence. And it's in those moments in His presence that fear is chased away. It's those moments in His presence that you deal with your doubts. It's in His presence that you find the strength to go another day. It's in His presence that you're able to take all that negative stuff and all the bad news that keeps coming every day. The news seems to get worse. And you're able to take all that and you're able to discharge it and instead be in His peace. If you are living in fear and if you're just overwhelmed with anxiety, the answer is not another hour in front of cable news. The answer is turn that off and get in the presence of the Lord. Come on.